Marcie is with Wesh 2, as you know, our local NBC affiliate, and is just a good partner and friend in the work that we do with the media. And so really she's going to share a lot of content with you today, and I'm going to facilitate a conversation so that all the pressure's on Marcie. So thank you for that. Today we're going to talk to you about how in the world we partner with folks like Marcie to get our organizations on TV and print media, as well as radio. How in the world do we get all this media coverage? And we're going to use Second Harvest today as a case study because we have had a lot of success with the media, especially in this past year, but really over the past 38 years, and 35 of which that we've partnered with Wesh. So we're going to use us just as a case study today. We're going to talk about some tips and tricks that we've learned and that we utilize in order to get that media coverage and work with partners like Marcie. And Marcie's going to share from her perspective, with all the nonprofits she works with, how can you effectively work with somebody like her in order to get yourself covered, tell your story, engage with the watchers, the viewers from Wesh. I want to be the first to say, well, two things. One, we actually in total, because this was put together prior to the end of our year of partnership, if you will, we raised in total $2.4 million in partnership with Wesh this year, which is incredible. We also spent that 5 times faster than we ever would this year. As you saw those car lines, it's heartbreaking to see, and I will never forget the day, our last day of this, where I had to tell 30 families that we were out of food for the day. That was probably the most painful and impactful moment in my 3 years at the food bank. And Marcie was standing by my side through all of that. Luckily, we had a distribution the next day, and we were able to send them someplace to get food quickly. I also want to say, I've sat in the audience where a large organization has been the case study, and I've seen numbers like this on the screen and said, well, holy, you know what, this is just not feasible, right? This is not me. And I want to say, we are a case study today, but this is not the norm. This is not the point of why we're presenting today. We want to give you some tips to get started with your media coverage or to enhance your media coverage in partnership with folks like Marcie, not to say this is what it can create for you. So whether you're larger than us and do this better, which is very possible in this community, or you're smaller and you're sitting here and saying, oh my God, 2.4 million is my entire budget for the year, or my old organization 3 times my entire budget for the year, how is this even feasible? I want you to forget the numbers and focus on the partnership, because that's really what today is all about.
As a partnership that has brought them, in its lifetime, 6 million pounds of food and about $4 million. That's an incredible relationship. That's one that I think anybody can say, that's a donor that I want to foster an incredible relationship with, and I want to cultivate that person or that entity in any way, shape, or form. Well, I am that entity. That is Wesh. But nobody thinks about the media as they do their donors. And I'm here today to tell you, you should be thinking about the media like one of your best donors. And the reason why is because last year, for Second Harvest, the amount of television coverage that we were able to provide them was worth almost $2 million. Just by storytelling in our newscasts, through Share Your Christmas, through the different days of giving that we did. I don't know anybody that has a $2 million media budget outside of maybe, I don't know, John Morgan, Dan Newland, you know, those guys. And when I crunched those numbers for Dan, he kind of went, are you kidding me?
I want to give you a sense of what that 2.4 million really looks like for the food bank. Not from a feeding people standpoint, but from a fundraiser standpoint, because that's why we're all here. $2.4 million from over 13,000 donors. To give you a sense, my donor base annually is typically close to 20,000 donors. 13,000 just from her 3 telethons. Half of that money came from brand new donors, donors who had never given to the food bank before. And since that telethon, or those telethons, since those donors' first gift, they've given another $560,000 to the food bank. Marcie helped me grow my donor base. all by telling stories. And I think that's the core of what this is all about. She helped me look credible in the community. She helped our organization tell our story and share our mission. She helped people know where to go to get help, which was critical during this pandemic, that so many people didn't know where to go. And I remember in Volusia County when we had a slower morning because it was raining and cold and it was dark and nobody knew that we were giving food out that day for some reason. And she said it on the news and we had people showing up for hours to get food because all she had to do is say, this is where you go, and people were there. And I literally had donors tell me, I gave to you because I saw you on the news, and that tells me you're a credible organization and you're going to do what you say you're going to do with my money. I had 2 donors in the same week tell me that. Now, if that's not a sign that this is going well, I don't know what gained this coverage. So this is where we get to the practical of all of this. Second Harvest does a tremendous amount of work with media. Just this past year, 2020, we had 353 unique stories, whether they be print, radio, TV, that went out in the community, a potential viewership of 161 million sets of eyes. It's tremendous. That's 161 million people who might want to be a part of our mission. Or as Marcie liked to point out to me when we talked the other day, that's like a politician in the middle of an election year being on TV every single day. It's pretty tremendous coverage for us, and that had a lot to do with where we were in the world, right? The pandemic brought to light how much people are sitting on the edge, and one loss of a job or one ailment can lead to falling off that edge and needing help. We're also successful because we pay a PR firm to help us. We pay a PR firm to put out press releases, to call reporters, to pitch our story. And so I want to own that fact that we're at that point that we have jumped into media being an important part of our fundraising, and because of that, we pay for 40 hours a week to be able to get that help, to be in front of the right people to tell our story. And that's one of the ways we gain coverage, is through that PR firm. Marcie's going to share a few more.
Because journalists are like children, and we don't want to eat our vegetables. We only want the good stuff. Give us the good stuff. So I'm here to tell you that, like any good parent, you have to sneak the vegetables in with the good stuff. How does that relate to TV coverage? So TV stations have many different goals throughout the day. Obviously, there's the big lead story that everybody's got to have. And then you have the enterprise stories, the stories that are, we got this one, okay. The stories that are interesting and unique and you're not going to see on the other station. They might be a harder edge story. They might be a story, an issues-based story. Then there are going to be the lighter stories, the stories that everyone's like, oh, that makes me feel so good. So you want to figure out how to not be the lead story, trust me. None of you want to be the lead story. But how do you be that interesting, unique enterprise story, or that, oh my God story that makes everybody feel warm and good? So you are all experts at something, right? You all have an industry or an issue that is unique to your organization. And I'm here to tell you that you need to exploit the hell out of that. We are always journalists, when I say we, journalists, are always looking for experts. So you want to make sure that we know who you are and what you do. Well, how do you do that, Marcie? How the heck do we get to know one another? It's going to take a little work on your part. I hate to say that. But first and foremost, I want to say, figure out who in your organization knows who. Does somebody know the receptionist at the station? Does somebody know the executive assistant to the general manager? There are all sorts of ways to make entry into a television station outside of cold calling the assignment desk, sending a press release, things like that that everybody does. And relationships, again, courting your donor, relationships start with an introduction. And if you have a way to make an introduction to the news director, an assignment editor, anybody who works in the editorial side of the business, reporters, photographers, producers, that's something you want to capitalize on. And it might take a little poking around on LinkedIn, on Facebook, but there are connections everywhere. It's kind of surprising. And then you use those connections in a multitude of ways. You get them information about an event or something that's going on. Sure, that's easy, right? But it doesn't build a relationship. It's a very transactional type thing. And we want to move beyond the transactional and into the relationship building. So what does someone like me have a passion for? What does my LinkedIn page say or my Facebook page say? What do I post about? And I mean, I'm not on air, right? But the on-air people post much more about their lives than they probably ever should. But that's a resource for you. That is a way to drill down into, this is what is important to this person. This is what their interest is. And so I might be able to strike up a connection using this. It's all about how can you make it, it's like you're trying to make a friend, right?
This is my garage. Favorite part about my garage is all the tools in the garage. First thing I learned when I got to the food bank is that a press release isn't everything. I just thought you put a press release out there and people pick up the coverage and they start talking about you on the news, right? Well, no, that's actually not true at all. It's a tool. It's a tool that helps you get a little bit of information to a wide audience quickly. But it is not the end-all, be-all of getting media coverage. And so the tip that I just wanted to throw in here is the relationships are way more valuable than the press release. So don't agonize over that press release for 6 hours when you could be having coffee with somebody for an hour one morning and gaining their trust and their respect and that connection with them that's going to lead you to way more coverage than that piece of paper that you agonized over. And I know we've all had those moments.
Where I say, don't miss your opportunity, especially when there is something in the national lexicon that's developed, that's making headlines on a morning news program. The moment you see something in your wheelhouse making front pages of newspapers all over social media, the first thing you need to do is, how do we capitalize on that? How do we use this to tell our story here in Central Florida? Right? Because I'll tell you, I'm really sad for that organization, and I put them on TV before, and I know they're a great group, and I was like, gosh, how many more people could have known about you? So that is my biggest takeaway, in that always try to find a way to position yourself, like the lovely Allison Felix, to be able to capture that audience first. And that audience, your audience, is me, is us, is journalists. Beyond that big, giant national spotlight story, okay? Like Dan said, the press release is not the be-all, end-all. I can't.
On the air. So think about that. How can you position yourselves to give Marcie, or any other station, but preferably Marcie, the chance to be the first to win that race?
Let me capitalize that on a second. So I do. But it will help you, help me, help you stand out. If that makes sense.
And I know one of the things she shared with me as we were preparing this presentation is, especially if she's calling me in the morning, if I can't say yes, she's going to find somebody else, because she's got a story to put on the air. So it's part of the reason Second Harvest has built such a deep deck of folks. We have about 10 people in our pool of spokespeople who are trained, who know our talking points, and know how to frame a story, and who we trust to be behind a camera, or excuse me, in front of a camera. We don't trust any of them to be behind the camera, but in front of the camera, because we know that they can share our mission and our story. And we're all going to say it slightly differently, and we're all going to share different stories, and quite frankly, sometimes somebody's going to throw out a statistic from 5 years ago. Veronica knows who I'm talking about. It's fine. It happens. The goal of this is so that when the media calls us, we can jump. And that has been crucial for us this past year. We have been called a lot because what's happening with hunger relief in our community has been on the front lines of everybody's mind, and so we've jumped. At the same time, your calendar might look somewhat like this, but mine's not quite as positive and uplifting as this one is, but it was a great image, so I had to share it. At the same time, you can plan. And I don't want you to think all media is reactionary. Some of it is, certainly. We react quite a bit. But you can also plan ahead. When you have big events, big opportunities, a story that you know coming up, you can certainly take that opportunity to share that information with the media. I'll give you a testimony of somewhere where we screwed up with that. We had a woman who was testifying in front of a congressional committee nationally who we should have positioned with the media as somebody to talk to ahead of time. It would have been a great chance for us to be able to put us as the expert out in front and give that to one station as the primary to be able to tell that story first. We fell on our face there, totally own that. We did not put that information out until the day she was testifying. And mind you, she was one of 3 people across our nation testifying in front of this committee. We put that information out there. Wesh and one other station were the 2 first to jump at it and put that information out there within hours of us getting it to them. We had an opportunity there that we missed because we hadn't thought far enough ahead.
Cover something. 10:30 a.m. It's the best time. Why? Why is that the best time? Because our editorial meetings in the morning are happening anytime between 9 and 10. Staff is coming on board anytime between 9 and 10. So 10:30 gives us time with a crew to get to your event. 11 o'clock is really close to the noon show, and we probably assigned it out. But if you've got, and let's face it, it's probably not a lead story. I hope it's not a lead story. I don't want any to be a lead story. But we're going to have to probably do a second story. That crew is going to do something else later in the day, that it might be the lead story. But if they're able to get to you first and shoot your story, and they've got a little bit of time to write it before whatever the heck else is going to happen during the day. And that ensures that it's going to make the 4 o'clock news or the 5 o'clock news. So earlier is always calls anywhere from 10 to 11 a.m. in the morning. And we're going to ask you to do an interview probably before 1 o'clock, maybe 2 o'clock. If you tell me you're not available until 3:30, that means your story cannot be in the 4 o'clock news. Just is, because I'm going to interview you, it's going to take maybe 10, 15 minutes, and I got to go, I got to write my story, then I got to hand it to my photographer, he's got to edit it, then we got to feed it back to the station, then I got to get it in the, I mean, it's a process, and now it's the 5 o'clock news. Now, it's not bad to be in the 5 o'clock news, but you'd much rather be in the 4 and the 5, the 5 and the 6, then we can only get you in once. So those are some really key times for you. If you're going to hold an event, 10:30 in the morning. Be ready to take those phone calls from reporters between 10 and 11 and try to be available to talk before 2 p.m. When it comes to the media, Dan used the word source. Consider yourself a source. Consider how you can be a source for the journalist friends that you're going to make. Because again, having a journalist indebted to you is a really good thing. So if you know something pretty, credible about something completely different, you want to pass that on because your husband is so-and-so, or your wife is so-and-so, or your partner, or your son, or your daughter works somewhere and they know this thing, and you call me and tell me about it, and then I can turn it into that lead story. Well, damn, you are now at the top of my Rolodex when it comes to something else that I have to do later on. It's about that relationship building. And again, if I'm able to put you on TV, every 30 seconds in my morning newscast is worth $1,000. So remember that earned media has real dollars and value behind it, but also can make a huge difference in building your credibility within the community. And don't forget to be an expert. And don't forget to take advantage of the headlines or a trend that you see coming, because again, you're an expert in your field, and if you see a trend coming that is going to explode here locally or nationally, then you can start talking about that and positioning yourself to be able to let the media know, hey, I'm the people that you want to talk to. Do that. Because I can't tell you how many times I've gone back on my email and gone, I got an email from somebody, wait, let me look up that organization. Yes, okay, I'm going to call them because 3 weeks ago they told me that they're an expert in this. It's happened multiple times.